What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at Data Dash, and today is December 10th of 2017. Well, folks, I'm here today to talk about what's been on everyone's mind over the past few days and weeks, and it's something that's going to be launching later on this afternoon for the first time in history, and it is no other than Bitcoin futures. So, I think we all understand this is going to be a pretty historic event. It's been taking up practically every headline related to Bitcoin outside of Bitcoin's price action. And it's been almost the explanation as to why a lot of people are starting to buy into Bitcoin. However, I do want to answer as many questions as I can because I know a lot of you come from different perspectives and backgrounds and curiosities in regards to these futures. I know first and foremost, a lot of you, when you hear futures trading or Bitcoin futures, you're like, what does this even mean? I know a lot of people, this is the first time people have actually traded or invested in anything in regards to investing in cryptocurrencies. So a lot of people haven't traded in traditional markets or studied traditional markets. And I do want to help get people to understand the ramifications of what these futures are, who's going to be trading and kind of playing inside the futures, and what they entail in the sense of rules and parameters in regards to Bitcoin. So I'll be describing the futures through and through, giving you a brief understanding without having to do all the monotonous research. And then as well as that, I'm going to be giving you my perspective as to what these futures entail. A lot of people are saying that this is going to lead Bitcoin to skyrocket to new highs, and some people are saying that it's going to crash it down to nothing. Everyone's got their different opinions on this, and I'm going to be giving you a pretty middle down approach in regards to what I think this is going to do, and really what you should be looking out for. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. First and foremost, as we can tell from the beginning, as I was saying, this has been really leading Bitcoin to run up. Now, of course, there's been some retail, interest and stuff in the sense of retail adoption. People like you and I buying their first Bitcoin, helping to push up the price. I know there's been a little bit of mania and stuff, and everyone's been getting involved with it. Now the price is much higher than where it was a few months ago. And as we can see, we've had, this kind of build up after we got past 10K. We had a few days of price strength confirmation holding above that big even, and a continued rally going all the way up to almost 20,000 on GDAX and Coinbase. And other exchanges getting around the $18,000 range. So a lot of crazy run up inside Bitcoin over the past few days. And I think a lot of the hype does come from futures. And a lot of people are curious as to what this is going to entail. So let's go ahead before we come back here to price and talk about what this might detail in price. It's good to understand what these futures are going to mean. And what's nice is a lot of mainstream media outlets actually have covered this pretty well and given some good details. So if we go through here, I'll leave the links down below if you'd like to read through them. The CBOE, or the Chicago Board of Exchange, which is a big derivatives market, and derivatives is a mix of different financial instruments and different markets, but futures play a role inside the derivatives market, and futures are going to allow institutions to really get their first grasp on trading Bitcoin, but they're not actually going to be trading Bitcoin, and we'll get to that as we go through here. So this is going to allow them to bet on the future, the coin's future price. So it'll open the door to institutions being able to trade Bitcoin without having to go open a Coinbase account or open a GDAX account. Not to mention, it's going to allow these pools of funds that would never be allowed to go into those accounts to trade it on an official market. So again, futures markets are very, very large, and this is where the institutional investors are mainly trading. Retail investors, yes, have the opportunity to invest in these futures contracts. However, it's not exactly open to a lot of retail investor brokers right now, because when a retail investor, a person like you and I, for less fancy term, average everyday people, when we want to do it, we have to go to a broker platform. These people are trading on exchange. They're trading. They have the big player money, and they really are the ones who make the big swings in price in regards to these financial instruments. So they're going to be betting on the price of it. The thing about these futures is, in original futures contracts, you were able to claim usually the commodity. Let's say, for example, we were trading futures for oil or futures for wheat or corn or whatever. There was always the commodity to really back it up, and you could actually exchange it way back in the day. However, most futures nowadays, and we're seeing more and more of a trend for this, especially as financial markets continue to grow as a part of our economy, we're seeing that futures are becoming more cash settled, and this is what these futures are. So later on this afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, or Central Time, sorry, you're going to see the CBOE have the opportunity to trade these futures. So these are cash settled. These are pretty much where people are either, paying the difference to, in the sense of winning on the trade, buying, these futures at a price and then selling them at a higher, or selling them at a loss and having to pay that difference. So there's going to be people playing both ways. You can go long, meaning you can be bullish on it and hopefully ride it and sell it at a higher price and make a profit, or you can bet against it. And this is something that people need to understand to a degree. This is the first time in history, outside of the few opportunities you have to short Bitcoin on some exchanges nowadays, where you have a full, clear path as an institutional investor to short Bitcoin very easily with these future contracts. Now, some people have debates as to whether or not this is going to have an effect on Bitcoin's price, or if these futures really even matter, because they're cash settled. They aren't really tied to the actual commodity. And some people think that this isn't going to have any ramification, or it's just going to be something completely separate. Here's the thing. It will have a ramification, because everyone right now is legitimizing the idea of Wall Street getting involved in this, and they're going to be watching what Wall Street thinks of Bitcoin, because the institutional money is going to determine whether or not really Bitcoin gets pushed up in the long term as a valued digital asset, which is really what it's become. It's become less of a currency and more of this investment vehicle. Want to know how that is? Look at what everyone's doing. Everyone's not buying Bitcoin so they can go pay for their coffee with Bitcoin. They're holding it. It's this digital commodity. It's a very big fascination, and some people think that this is a little too early on for Bitcoin to be on here because it's very volatile. But supposedly, when this goes through, this is going to be really legitimizing Bitcoin. This is, again, the first time futures are getting traded. And I know, for example, the CME Group, which is launching their futures later on, has been saying that this is going to be taming Bitcoin. This is going to be, again, like I said, legitimizing it and reducing volatility. Gotta say, folks, maybe in the long term it will. But right now, it will not tame volatility. And as if for those of you who don't know, volatility is the kind of movement, the momentum of price within a certain amount of time. It's if you have rapid price action movement, you have excessive volatility. It's uncertainty in price or valuation of any given asset class or anything. In this case, we're going to be looking at the price of Bitcoin as well as the futures. So, a lot of people are excited again because Wall Street firms are going to get involved in this, and there are a lot of concerns in regards to the stability of Bitcoin. Again, people have been saying that futures are going to do it. I don't think they're not going to stabilize things real quick. Now, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. As we've already stated, they're cash settled. They're going to be launching at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, but they also have margin requirements. So, what does this mean? So the initial margin requirement is been raised to 44%. It was around 30% originally. But this is basically meaning that anyone who wants to participate is going to have to put up 44% of the actual capital to trade this. So here's a good little description here. A margin requirement is how much investors have to set aside as collateral so that other parties in the trade know any losses can be covered. The requirement of Bitcoin futures is several times that the commodity of that of other commodities such as gold and oil. So when people saw this, I think a lot of people who have looked into futures markets, 44% is quite excessive, but this is due to the fact of uncertainty. It's due to the factor that Bitcoin has been having days where it goes up 10 or 20% and down 10 to 20%. We've seen excessive price action movement in Bitcoin. Again, going back to that topic of volatility. And with excessive volatility, you have uncertainty, and you have to have collateral to back it up. So it's saying that there's the capital there for anyone who wants to trade it. They need to have that capital there to back it up. And this is common in futures markets. So, I think that people are still going to be trading this. There's plenty of people who are willing to pay or at least have that money up front for that margin requirement. And I think it's not something that's going to get in the way from people trading this. So another thing just to keep in mind, there is that margin requirement. It's going to be a lot of large banks trading this. It's not going to be retail investors going down to TD Ameritrade or E-Trade or all these other brokers and stuff and being able to trade these futures contracts. That's going to come in the next few days or weeks. And in fact, I think actually in this article, or the one that we went through previously, they did have TD Ameritrade saying they were kind of taking a sideline approach. They're waiting to see what happens and seeing if it actually kind of smoothens out Bitcoin. And if it does, which some people do believe, I honestly don't think it will initially. If that's the case, then they'll come in and that'll bring more capital into this whole kind of thing. So Again, this is going to be a very big event for Bitcoin. A lot of people, again, now that we have an understanding of it, are curious. Nick, is this going to be good? I've been seeing Bitcoin go down. I've been seeing it go up, and really, we saw the price come down here. It looked like we were actually going to get a little bit of a correction before the futures, but even with that pullback, we've gotten a rebound. Pretty much within the past 3 hours, we've corrected all of this price action that we saw selling off in Bitcoin, and we're now back into this kind of zone where we were seeing initially a wedge in the price. So it shows that the market, I think, is pretty uncertain. We're waiting to see what the big players think. And a lot of people have asked me, Nick, is there some secret sauce? Do you know anything? Like, are the futures going to lead it to go to the upside, to the downside? Give us that, secret information. Guys, first off, I don't have any insider information on this. And second off, anyone who tells you that they know where this is going to go is probably lying to you. There is really no way of knowing if it's going to go drastically up or drastically down unless you have that insider information, or if you're at the top of everything, if you're a big player on Wall Street or a big whale in the community, as we've talked about. So I'm going to be diving through this in just a moment, but basically, as you can see, the prices come back into this neutral zone. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. All I can tell you all in regards to those of you who want to trade this, who want to know what's going to happen, in my humble opinion, I'm pretty confident in saying that this is going to lead to a lot of excessive volatility. If you think Bitcoin has been jumping around a lot, futures traders, with how new this is and how exciting it is, and the first time that Wall Street actually has the opportunity to flow this kind of capital into something tied to Bitcoin in a sense, you're going to see prices go pretty radical up and down. And I don't know if this is going to lead towards the correction that I've been talking about hopefully happening on Bitcoin, where we can see a healthy correction, healthy pullback, so we can have long-term uptrends. Or this might lead towards going to 30 or 40K or something. Again, you are going to see some crazy price action, in my humble opinion. We'll have to see how it goes, though. So I'll tell you all right off the bat, if you want to know what I'm doing, I'm not going to initially be trading this unless I really feel inclined to tonight. You all know that I try to not get emotional during these time periods. I know that it's going to lead towards some pretty big swings. And just to let you all know, I'm going to be live streaming tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to be watching this live and, going through it and trying to break it down and get an understanding as to what Wall Street's, thinking about it. It's going to be really exciting. It's really just in a few hours. So we'll have to see what they think about, Bitcoin, and if there's any, serious movements. The one thing I do have as a concern, as much as I think, we could see very well a correction with futures coming, because this is going to give them the opportunity to short as well as go long on it. I really have a worry about the manipulation of Bitcoin whales with futures. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you all know, the concentration of wealth inside Bitcoin is pretty isolated to a few addresses. And this is, usually you hear the term tossed around, whales are pumping and dumping markets and stuff. And this whole analogy of Bitcoin whales is the fact that, when Bitcoin was very early on, there was a lot of people mining it, and they hold a large share of Bitcoin because it was easy to mine back then. And if you have large mining operations, you have a lot of the newly generated Bitcoin, or it's just people who have generally bought a lot of Bitcoin when it was cheap, and now it's expensive nowadays. So the one thing I have as a fear is, seeing as there's such a concentration of wealth inside Bitcoin, and I don't care too much about a few people owning Bitcoin. I care more about how that's going to have a ramification with futures, and how, there could be price manipulation on both ends. If someone on, for example, the institutional side of investing and stuff opened a GDAX account and stuff, or a Coinbase account or some other exchange, and had bought up a lot of Bitcoin over the past few months, they can lead towards a sell-off in Bitcoin markets, and they can also trade futures contracts. Usually people find a way around this kind of stuff, and they could play it both ways. They could have rode it up to the upside, sell it at the top, and start, locking in their position. And they could also short futures if they're an institutional investor, or if they're a retail investor and their broker is going to allow them to trade them. So I'm worried about this kind of manipulation on the dual sides of both the actual Bitcoin itself and then the futures contracts. I feel like there's a lot of money to be made in this, and because of that, there's going to be some serious volatility, a lot of manipulation in this market. That's why I think we're going to see excessive volatility. And again, to put that kind of in the scale, the ownership, I mean, you see a very few amount of addresses own a massive portion of Bitcoin. Really, the top 1%. I'm not trying to get all like crazy here and stuff with doing like Bernie memes and stuff, but I mean, you've got about 28% of people almost owning an entire, actually, well, I think we've actually got, sorry, 1% here owning almost 30% of Bitcoin. So this is pretty big ramifications and stuff. So I'm not going to be trying to trade this, folks. I'm going to wait and see what happens. If there's a determined pattern that comes through with these futures, rather than like an initial jump or an initial, downturn, I'm not going to do anything crazy. But if I start to see an actual pattern forming or some technical patterns that make me confident one way or another, maybe I might do a little bit of trading, might do a little bit of dabbling in this whole kind of event. It's going to be interesting. I more than anything just want to watch it and see what happens. Going on more of a moral sense here, the Bitcoin futures, it has some benefits and some negatives to it on a moral sense. The good thing is that this might be able to lead, if futures go well, towards an ETF, an exchange traded fund, which is basically, in simple terms, going to be an easy way that people like you and I can go about holding Bitcoin without having to actually go and buy our Bitcoin on, Coinbase or GDAX and, whatever it may be, and having the futures contract being backed up, much like how we would originally imagine a futures contract to work. So you could trade the price action of Bitcoin for the average retail investor through ETFs. It's a lot more simple. It's kind of like trading a stock. So that would be a good thing. It would allow people to really get mainstream adoption and not have to go through the monotonous process of downloading getting all these hardware wallets and stuff like that. Or any kind of wallet to store everything and going on exchange and buying it. So that would be good, but there's also a bad thing as well. This is literally going to allow institutions to start funneling tons of money in Bitcoin. Now that might sound good, but it could always be both to the upside and the downside. And there can be a lot of manipulation. And with the isolation and the kind of compression of the ownership of Bitcoin in a very select few hands, futures contracts might be a little bit deadly with market manipulation in this early market. And I think it's going to, as a lot of retail investors get involved with Bitcoin, a lot of people are going to get burnt at these levels. So I'm more leaning towards the side that this could lead towards a correction. I know many people are optimistic about Bitcoin futures leading to the upside. If you want a short summary, I think it's kind of been a buy the hype or buy the rumor and sell the news as these futures have come in. And as we've reached almost $20,000, I think it's time for Bitcoin to possibly see a correction. And these futures might be that. It might be what the CME group was saying in the sense of taming Bitcoin. No one knows. So we'll have to see. I hope you stay tuned. I hope you all join me on my live stream that I'm going to be doing at 6 p.m. Or actually, I'm going to be starting at around 5:30 as we start to prepare and talk about it. We'll be diving into these futures, so it's going to be an exciting moment. Either way, it's going to be historic. It really is, and I can't wait to watch it with you all. And hopefully, if we feel inclined to, we can possibly trade it. But again, you're going to have to make that decision for yourself, guys. I can't tell you what to do in these markets, and no one should be able to tell you what to do. It's your money. It's your decisions. I know you all are mature adults and stuff, and you guys can make the proper decision as to whether or not you should really trade during this time period. Again, we've had a fantastic run-up, and markets are going to be bouncing up and down. But maybe futures will settle on a trend for Bitcoin. Maybe we will have a nice correction that stabilizes Bitcoin and makes it more of a long-term viable digital asset in the cryptocurrency space. Or we might continue towards radical highs and be going through a new paradigm where Bitcoin goes to 40K, 50K, and beyond. Who knows? But we'll have to see. Anyways, everyone, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you all have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments down below or save them for the live stream where I can try to answer them. Anyways, that's it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all when the futures launch. Stay tuned.